Hello Internet, Johnny Lippiett here again, coming at you from Brooklyn, New York, Park Slope to be exact, via New Zealand for 10 years and before that from England. And this is my series of vlogs or mini sax lessons, if you will, and this is going to be the last one I'll do for a while, unless there's any particular interest for people who want to hear me go on about more stuff, which is highly unlikely, I should think, because you've probably all been put to sleep already. But if you like this, I'm happy to keep talking about anything you want. But in this last instalment, number 10, I wanted to talk to you guys about mouthpieces and do a mouthpiece comparison showdown, because I know there's nothing more exciting, is there, than people talking about mouthpieces, right? Now, the only time that's not the case is if you're talking to somebody who doesn't play the saxophone and it's the fastest way to end a relationship, for example. So it's very important to only talk to other saxophone players about mouthpieces, and even then a lot of saxophone players aren't interested in mouthpieces, and it can be very boring and very tiresome. We can get very caught up, can't we, in the minutiae of which ligature sounds this way and which sounds that, and this reed and that reed. All sounds the same, doesn't it? Your sound's going to come out no matter how you sound. I always remember having a lesson with a great tenor player in London. I'm sure some of you guys know him, Stan Solzman, and he's great. He's got this lovely London accent. He was like, "All right, John, you all right?" And I remember I was trying a hard rubber link and a metal link, and I was asking for his advice on the difference of which he felt was the best. And he was like, "All right, John, well, you know, one's just got like a little bit of plastic at the end of the saxophone, hasn't it? And the other's got a bit of metal at the end of the mouthpiece." He said he couldn't even hear a difference. And one, I think, was an 8-star hard rubber and the other was a 6-star link. And to me as a player, they felt incredibly different, but the sound coming out of the end was exactly the same, right? So it's important to remember this as players, that we can get caught up in the neurosis of it. It is a disease, it's an illness in many ways, swapping mouthpieces, trying ligatures, trying this, trying that. It's an insanity that can actually drive us to despair, waste a lot of practice time and waste a lot of money. But that aside, I love mouthpieces just as much as the next guy, right? And I said in an earlier video, I used to collect a lot of very old Otto Link mouthpieces, a lot of tone masters, a lot of slant signatures. I've sold them over the years, and I finally settled on 3 that I liked the most. I've only ever really played Otto Links. I've been through periods of playing Selmer soloists, of playing hard rubber Bergs, metal Bergs, and I end up just sounding the same on all of them pretty much. We've got to remember as well that mouthpieces don't make us play any better. They don't give us better time. They don't make us know any more tunes. They don't make us interact better with the rhythm section. Okay, and we know that we're going to have the voice we have, right? No matter what clothes you wear, you're still going to be you, right? A great tennis player is a great tennis player not because of the racket they use or the balls they're using or the sneakers they wear. Yes, that might help to a certain extent, but generally speaking, I'm a big believer of find a mouthpiece you like and stick with it. Okay, now the only perhaps deviation of that is if you're somebody who is lucky enough to endorse mouthpieces. Perhaps we know we live in a time where there's an incredible number of boutique mouthpieces out there, and if you work for a company that is, you know, getting you to promote their mouthpiece, then obviously it's great to do that. But for most of us mere mortals that are off the radar in that kind of thing, I don't know, pick a mouthpiece and stick with it. And again, there's no wrong or right. As we've said before, some people like huge mouthpieces, right? Ernie Watts, I think, played something like a 16-star link. Seriously, I'm not kidding. A huge, big, whopping great big mouthpiece. Whereas Cannonball Adderley played a 5 Mayer with number 2 reeds and had one of the biggest sounds on the horn, believe it or not. Dexter Gordon played a 5-star link. A lot of those early tenor players played very small mouthpieces. Coltrane played a 5-star. I think he moved up to a 6-star around Crescent period. But for the most part, they sound the same, right? okay? And if you say, oh, well, Coltrane's sound changed, it changed because of his sonic perception of how he wanted his sound to change, not necessarily because he put a different mouthpiece on. So, without any further ado, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about my mouthpieces, and hopefully by just playing a few of these Otto Links, you'll see that I still sound the same, which is highly average, I think, at best, to be honest. But this one here is a 6-star Florida Link. It's got the no USA on the shank, and it's all original, right? It's never been worked on at all. This one came to me through a lovely saxophone player in London, Willie Garnett, who I'm sure some of you know, and I got that for like 150 bucks back in the day, before this crazy nonsense all started with mouthpieces. It was basically brand new in the box and everything, and I've played this mouthpiece for many, many years. About that mouthpiece is it's a 6-star, and I find for me with a medium reed, like a number 3 or 3.5, and as we've said on the video before, I learned to get a hard reed and try and shave it down. It works great for me. It suits me for what I want to do. You might try it and say it sucks and sounds awful, but for me, I've played this mouthpiece for like 15 years now, and even though I always sometimes try other things, you know, we get the illness occasionally from time to time, it creeps in, I always come back to this one. And I like to think, crazy idea, maybe it will inspire you, but you know how on Harry Potter, right? And he goes into the shop to buy a wand, and the guy says, the wand finds you. I sometimes think that's like that. It's with mouthpieces, right? The mouthpiece finds you. I think it's very remiss as perhaps a beginning first year jazz student at university to want to spend ridiculous amounts of money on the most expensive mouthpiece. It's a pointless waste of time, really. I've heard people play Yamaha 4C mouthpieces, and they can sound super amazing, right? A lot of players play the mouthpiece that came with the horn. No shame in that at all. It's finding what works for you, but traditionally we know that the Otto Link mouthpiece and a Selmer Mark VI go quite nicely together. We know that Otto Link was a German mouthpiece maker who largely formulated the design of the mouthpiece, right? That big bore, the big open chamber. And, you know, it's good to remember that most other mouthpieces come from the Otto Link design, that big chamber. And of course, when we get into baffles and high baffled mouthpieces, that was a different design. And all the baffle does is speed the air up through the horn, which makes a brighter sound. Sometimes the baffle in a mouthpiece is like an aeroplane wing, isn't it? You know, how the air goes over the wing and it speeds it up. That's like the baffle of a mouthpiece in a kind of reverse principle, if that makes sense. So this is my number 1 piece, right? And also, for those of you who are interested, this saxophone is a 1965 Selmer Mark VI that you're going to love this one. I found, literally, it came from someone under someone's bed in New Zealand. Some guy had bought it new in 1965, played it for a little while in a farm in the middle of nowhere, and then it surfaced in about 2002, 2003. I had a student come to see me who had this saxophone, and I said, how much do you want for it? And it ended up with me. So again, a bit like Harry Potter and the wand. But for years, when I started playing, I had a Yamaha YTS 23. And that saw me through some pretty good times, right? It was a beginner's student horn, but it didn't have to take a beating. And when I first came to America in about 1992, and I travelled around the States, that was the horn that, you know, survived being thrown around on endless Greyhound buses. So anyway, yes, 1965 Selmer Mark VI, 6-star Otto Link, and this is a Roy Mayer reed. As I was saying on my reed videos, I just buy boxes of reeds off the internet. Anything will do, doesn't really matter. I try to make them all work. And this is a particularly good one. Roy Mayer, I think he worked for Lavoz, but I got a box of 25, right? Brand new box of 25 for 10 bucks in an auction. So that's where I like to be with reeds. So without any more ado, I'm going to play another mouthpiece now, just so you can hear the difference between the two. Now you might say, oh, that second one sounded much larger, it sounded bigger, oh, to me that's the one you should be playing. Well, I can assure you, I've done no end of experimentation with this stuff, and after a week, everything settles down and they all just start feeling the same again. Let's have a look at this one here, right? This is a 7-star link here. Again, no USA. 7-star on the side there. And again, all original. I found it off an old guy in London. Sold it me for £100 again, like 150 bucks. Back in the day before craziness, because we know people are paying like $1,000 for these now, which is silly because if you see the original adverts, they were only something like 50 bucks or something. So let me play you this 7-star so you can hear how this one sounds, okay? Now, if I was better at internet editing and all of that, which I'm not because I'm total newbie to all this internet stuff and social media, but I'm trying to learn how to do it because I'm getting back into music after a break. 10 years I spent working in construction. And that'll enough to do your head in, right? So let me play you this 7-star now. Now hopefully you'll hear that I still sound like me, right? Let's try this one. See what we think. Okay, sounds like me. Now it might have a bit more of a bigger sound, but I'm having to blow a bit harder to get that sound. So it's, you know, a double-edged sword, isn't it? What you gain in one department, you lose in another. But this would work just as well. If somebody said I had to play this one, that's okay, doesn't matter. 6-star, 7-star. For me, I prefer the 6-star. It's a slightly smaller opening. I feel I have a bit more control over it. But I like this piece just as much too. I think it sounds quite nice. Right, sounds okay. Okay, I think that sounds just exactly the same, right? Don't know what you think. 6-star Otto Link, 7-star Otto Link. One's kind of silver in colour, the other's a bit more gold in colour. I don't know, is that much of a difference? Both got the same ligature. I'll tell you what I will do though, because I know you love this stuff, right? All you crazy saxophone equipment dudes. I've got this other ligature here that someone gave me. You know what this is? You see those ones? Selma 440, I think it's called, or something. And this one works quite nicely on the Link. Now, again, I don't know if it works so differently that there's a profound difference. I don't know. You tell me, but if it is, I think it's negligible. So let's try this 7-star Link with this Selma ligature on it, okay? I think I still sound like me, right? Kind of still sound like me. Might feel a little bit different. Perhaps it blows a bit freer. I don't know. It's going to affect the way the reed blows, but it doesn't make me a better player. Doesn't help me learn giant steps in all 12 keys, right? Doesn't help me play at faster tempos. Sometimes a mouthpiece can beat time, you know how it feels like it's beating time. Sometimes a ligature can affect with that, but I think it's marginal, and for me it's not something I spend any time really working out on. You know, I just got this one because I think I found it on eBay for like $5 or something, so I got that. So let's put the old original one back on, and see how that one sounds again. If I was better at editing, like I said, I'd edit all this stuff out and you would not have to deal with it. So okay, I don't know, is there a difference there? Maybe there is to your ears, but to me, feels the same, kind of sounds the same. Let's go back to the original 6-star again, so you can hear that one. Let's try that. So we're back to the original 6 now. Okay, sounds pretty much the same, I think. You might have a different idea. You might say, no, man, I can really hear the difference. The second one, so much louder and more powerful. Maybe it is, but like I say, I'm going to pay the price at the other end, aren't I? At the extremes of the horn. One good thing to think about is, can we play the whole horn in one embouchure, right? Which is something nice to think about. Being able to play keep the embouchure exactly the same, play from a high F to a low B flat. I think that's always a fairly good sign. Now we know we use the embouchure muscles to play the subtones, right? Playing is going to have a slightly different embouchure to, but you get the idea that if we can play it all in one embouchure, that's often a good test as whether it's the right mouthpiece for you. And what's right for you could well be different to what's right for me. We've all got different vocal cords, we've all got different lung capacities, we've all got different diaphragms. As we said, George Garzone, I think, plays like a 10-star link with super hard reeds, but then I read George Garzone goes running every morning for 5 miles, right? So obviously that's going to have a huge influence and effect on your lung capacity. But what we have to realise is just playing the same mouthpiece as one of our heroes is not going to make us sound the same as them in any way, shape or form, okay? Now, let's try this one. Another link, right? This is a, what's this one? Now this one is a new vintage slant signature. Now this one's quite special to me because this was given to me by Bobby Wellens, who some of you know, I'm sure, and if you don't, do check out Bobby Wellens because he's one of the greatest, most original, unique saxophone players in the history of the instrument. He was an English guy, or Scottish, I beg your pardon, he'd be insulted, sorry Bobby. He was a Scottish guy but lived in England for most of his life, and he was one of the great players that came up in the 50s, the 60s, and all the American players who came over to England loved Bobby for a number of reasons. Yes, there was a number of reasons, but one of the reasons was that he was one of the only players around that time who really had his own sound, right? We know there's a lot of players from that generation like Tubby Hayes and Ronnie Scott and people of that nature, Dick Morrissey, some of the great 60s tenor players. But the thing with those guys is they were really largely trying to emulate the American thing, right? Sonny Rollins was their hero, Coltrane was their hero, so you could hear a lot of that in their playing, especially with Tubby Hayes. I mean, he was a monster player, but sometimes you would hear he had a lot of that American thing in his playing, whereas Bobby was completely unique and totally original, and they often said he sounded more like he was playing Highland bebop than Harlem bebop. He had this wonderful, longing, melancholic sound that's, for my money, one of the greatest sounds in the history of the saxophone. But he gave me this piece years ago. Somebody had just given it to him. I think they'd just come out, you know, when the Otto Link came out with the new vintage slant signatures. Somebody had given it to him. He was never interested in mouthpieces. I think he played one mouthpiece his whole life, the Selmer 4040, which wasn't actually made by Selmer. It was made by a company called Selmer, because this was back in the day when there was no copyright on stuff like that. It was a great mouthpiece. He sounded the same then. I think he had some dental work done in the late 90s and switched to a Link. Sounded exactly the same, right? Still sounded like Bobby because the sound came from within. So, but anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Let me play you this one. Now, this might have a bit of a different sonic feel because obviously it's hard rubber. It's a 7-star, and this is a new vintage slant sig. Sounds the same for me. I mean, there's subtle differences, right? One's made out of plastic, one's made out of metal. I could feel I'd have to work on the Altissimo there, but I'm not going to say, oh, the Altissimo was easier on that metal one, therefore that's the one I should play. What I'd say is these are very different mouthpieces internally. I need to make the adjustments in my throat. Again, if I had to play this piece forever, it would probably be fine. I wouldn't be a big deal. I could manage that, right? But again, I just gravitate back to the 6-star because that's the one I always just seem to find home base on. It was the one Willie Garnett gave to me in a spirit of love and kindness, and I felt it was a bit like Harry Potter receiving his wand. I've played tons of mouthpieces, I'm sure you all have, right? And sometimes it's good to go through that process because we know then that sometimes this whole thing is a load of rubbish, right? And we're going to sound the same on any mouthpiece, pretty much. Maybe not if we line them all up, because our embouchure and our chops are going to have to deal with the differentiations of that. But I guarantee you, after a week of playing the same mouthpiece, you know, you're going to sound like you. I swear to God. And like I said on that other video where Emilio Lyons had Stan Getz all lined 10 saxophones up, and he went and played every single one, all with different mouthpieces, reeds and everything, and he sounded the same on each one. Okay, good thing to do, record yourself doing this. That's one of the things that helped me, record myself playing along with different mouthpieces, and then blindfold test yourself and see if you can actually tell which one's the difference. And sometimes you'd be surprised, and we can get caught up in the neurosis of it all and realize that we're just wasting valuable time. Okay, unless you're somebody that loves equipment. I mean, there's no right or wrong, but I know I wish somebody had said to me early on, pick a mouthpiece and just stick with it. And again, for me, if somebody had said, just get a middle of the road mouthpiece, a 6-star, a 7-star with a medium reed, try and avoid the extremes. For years I played a 10-star Link with number 4 reeds because I thought that's what we had to do to be a good jazz player, right? I thought there was something kind of, you know, girly about playing a 5 Link. That would sound, oh, I couldn't tell anyone I played such a small tip opening because then I wouldn't be, you know. Nonsense, absolute nonsense. I wish somebody had told me that sooner. But alas, we sometimes have to find out through trial and error. And if I can just help somebody out there save a bit of time through not going through all this nonsense, then it's been a beautiful thing. So there we go. We've got 3 mouthpieces here. We've got the 7-star Super Tone Master. We've got the 7 hard robber. Oh look, it's looking like Freddy Krueger now, isn't it? And we've got my original 6. I'll try not to drop them all on the floor because that would suck. And I think you could see they all pretty much sound the same, right? So let me just finish up by going back to my 6-star Link, which is where I always feel comfortable. And it feels like a great mouthpiece, and I know it's a great mouthpiece because I've had a lot of people try this piece and they all really want to buy it. One of my dear friends, Xavier Perez, if you know him, X-Man. If you're not familiar with a tenor player called Xavier Perez coming out of New York, do check him out because he's a ferocious player and he wants this piece. Always coming up with deals to try and get me to sell it to him, right? But no, it's you know, it's where I feel comfortable, feels great on the horn, feels good for me. Okay, so that's my take on mouthpieces, specifically Otto Link mouthpieces. I hope this has been of some use to somebody somewhere. If not, delete it out of your box and or whatever people do. If you like this, click the like button, subscribe to my channel. I think so far I've got 14 subscribers, so I figure 14 people can't all be wrong, can they? But I'm trying to get back into music after a bit of a hiatus, and hopefully that was some help for you. There's 10 other vlogs, 9 other ones, 10 including this one, on various subjects of me going off on tangents or talking about anything. There's no wrong or right, it's only my way. I'm a humble student myself, and I hope it's been of some help to you. So I will sign off for the last time unless anyone wants me to talk about anything else. And Johnny Lippiett from Brooklyn, New York, signing out and saying au revoir, adios, sayonara, and auf Wiedersehen.